Mike Davies stared out the window, the cityscape a blur through tear-filled eyes. His reflection stared back, a stranger marked by time and regret. 15 years. 15 years since he had made the biggest mistake of his life. He had chosen passion over responsibility, leaving his pregnant wife, Jane, for another woman. The guilt gnawed at him, a constant ache in his soul. He remembered the day Jane had told him she was pregnant. The joy in her eyes had been blinding. He had felt a flicker of excitement then, quickly extinguished by the fear gripping his heart. He was entangled in an affair with Lisa, a woman who promised him the world. A world that didn't include a wife and child. The memory of their last conversation haunted him. Jane's face, pale and drawn, as she confronted him about Lisa. The hurt in her eyes mirrored the devastation in his own heart. He knew what he was doing was wrong, but the lure of a new life proved too strong to resist. He chose Lisa, blinded by infatuation, leaving Jane to pick up the pieces of their shattered dreams. Now, years later, the thrill of that forbidden romance had long faded, leaving behind a bitter residue of remorse. Lisa was gone, their relationship crumbling under the weight of his betrayal. He was alone, adrift in a sea of regret, haunted by the life he had left behind. The early days after leaving Jane were a blur. Mike was consumed by Lisa and the excitement of their new life. He tried to bury the guilt, telling himself he was setting himself free. He ignored the phone calls from Jane, the unanswered messages weighing heavily on his conscience. The weight of his actions soon became unbearable. He began calling Jane, only to be met with the cold silence of her voicemail. Each unanswered call chipped away at his resolve, reminding him of the family he had abandoned. He pictured Jane, her face etched with pain, struggling to cope with her pregnancy alone. One day, he gathered the courage to visit Jane. He stood on her doorstep, a nervous wreck, hoping for a glimpse of her, a chance to explain. The door opened to reveal her sister, her face a mask of anger. She informed him in no uncertain terms that Jane didn't want to see him. He left, defeated, the image of her sister's fury seared into his memory. Years passed, and the guilt continued to eat away at him. He had tried to move on, to build a new life, but the past clung to him like a shadow. The memory of Jane, her love and her pain, haunted him relentlessly. He knew he had to seek forgiveness, to try to mend the shattered fragments of their past. The pain of Mike's betrayal was a wound that cut deep. Jane felt lost, adrift in a sea of anger and despair. The life she had envisioned, the future she had dreamt of with Mike, lay in ruins. She was alone, facing an uncertain future with a child whose father had chosen to walk away. But Jane was a survivor. Drawing strength from the love for her unborn child, she slowly began to rebuild her life. She found solace in her family and friends, their unwavering support a lifeline in her time of need. Their love enveloped her, a warm embrace that helped heal the wounds left by Mike's betrayal. When her daughter, Sarah, was born, Jane poured all her love and energy into her. Sarah became her reason for living, her anchor in the storm. She vowed to give Sarah the happy and stable childhood that Mike had denied her. And she did. Jane built a good life for herself and Sarah, filled with love, laughter, and the unbreakable bond they shared. She never spoke ill of Mike, choosing instead to focus on the future. But deep down, a part of her couldn't help but wonder about him, to imagine the life he was leading. 15 years had passed since Mike had last seen Jane. 15 years of regret, of missed birthdays and milestones. The guilt had never left him, a constant companion reminding him of his failings. Now, he was filled with a longing to know his daughter, to be a part of her life. He found Jane's number after weeks of searching. His hand trembled as he dialed, his heart pounding in his chest. When she answered, her voice was different than he remembered, stronger, more guarded. He explained he wanted to see Sarah, to be a part of her life. Silence met his request, a silence thick with unspoken pain and resentment. Their first meeting was strained, filled with the echoes of the past. Jane was wary, her eyes reflecting the years of hurt she had endured. He understood her hesitation, her need to protect Sarah from further pain. He knew he had a long way to go to earn their trust, to prove that he was sincere in his desire to be a father to Sarah. He persevered, visiting Jane and Sarah whenever he could. He listened patiently as Jane recounted the years he had missed, the milestones he had failed to witness. He saw the flicker of curiosity in Sarah's eyes, the unspoken question of who he was and why he had been absent from her life.